I just saw Amber Heard's PSA. I saw it on TMZ about domestic violence, and she mentioned something that I think is very true, that we need to not be ashamed. We need to talk about it. The silence and the shame are deadly. The other thing is, not all victims of abuse are beautiful young Hollywood starlets. In fact, the overwhelming majority of victims of abuse are abused financially every bit as much as physically and emotionally. And one thing Amber doesn't touch on, because it didn't impact her, is that most abusers control the finances in the relationship, and they abuse financially. My abuser was a medical doctor and a military officer who controlled 100% of our finances. And like many civilian spouses of military officers, we move around the country so often, and we give our lives for our husbands so they can serve our country. But we're not protected by anybody. The military doesn't protect us. People honor active duty military members, and rightly so, but they forget the civilian spouses. We have no rights. And we live in social isolation, and we often are 100% dependent upon our abusers. So we need to offer more in this country than a run and hide shelter. Because for me, for example, a run and hide shelter was never, ever an option. And yet I was told by people in the military and others that if I wasn't willing to go and run and hide, I must not be truly a victim of abuse. And they say arrogant things like that because they don't understand. If you go to a shelter, many of them will only allow you to take 2 bags. That's it. I wasn't allowed to take a service dog. I'm disabled, I'm elderly, and I have with me 4 boxes of legal files, which is the only way I will ever be able to protect my rights and to defend or reclaim hundreds of thousands of dollars of my property. My abuser was allowed to force me into poverty, and then after about 14 months, he pops up with his income of hundreds of thousands of dollars with an attorney and literally took everything I owned. He took everything. I got no part of his retirement, no part of any community property. I got nothing. He even took the vehicle I was driving from a repair shop. It was being repaired. It had broken down on the road. It was being repaired under my insurance that he was not on. I was in the hospital being diagnosed with cancer, and while I was in the hospital, he found the car in a repair shop and took it, so that he had all 3 vehicles from our marriage, an income of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and everything I owned, including dogs and horses and everything, things I'd sacrificed my life for. He literally took all of it. All I have is the clothes I had in the hospital, or with me at the time I went to the hospital, and the 4 boxes of legal files and my service dog. But there are no programs anywhere in this country for victims of domestic violence and abuse that protect our property, our finances, our financial security, our ties to our community. If you're homeless, I'm now homeless. I have survived because my mother left me a tiny inheritance. But other than that, I would have nothing. I don't even have an address to receive mail. It is horrendous the amount of power an abuser has. And I should have been protected by whistleblower laws. I should have been protected by medical professionals reporting the abuse when they would decide not to. I should have been protected by North Carolina law. I should have been protected by a medical profession's duty to report. I should have been protected by my husband's chain of command and the code of honor of a military officer. And none of those things protected me. So, yes, we need to discuss abuse. We need to not be ashamed. We need to say, not all victims of abuse are beautiful 21-year-old women. And we need to understand that abuse is financial and emotional as well as physical. And we need to offer more than a run and hide shelter. We need to offer programs in this country to address the needs of over 90%, closer to 98% of victims of abuse, to protect their property, their financial security, their incomes, and their ties to their community.